to the F3 podcast, where we discuss all things that pertain to faith, family, and finances. We are your host today. I am the lowly but humble
Oh Lord.
Dr. Lionel M. Blair Sr., and I'm sitting next to the Empress, the grand, the sainted mother herself. Amen. The delicious,
All right
the
now.
wonderful, the glorious Saint Jasmine the First, my wonderful wife, Dr. Jasmine Blair. We got a good one for you today, as always.
Listen, welcome everybody to the F3 podcast. Shout out to all of our first time viewers. Thank you for being here. Listen. You'll get used to us. Remember, this is not church, and we will talk about what your pastor won't. So definitely, if you ever have a show topic, you've got a question, you want us to answer something, you want us to discuss here on the air, be sure to click that link where you can find out how you can become an avid supporter of the F3 podcast. And you can also drop us a voicemail, and who knows, your topic may be the topic of the next episode. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to jump into today's topic. And one thing that I've seen with this topic is we have a lot of believers that confuse me. And when I say confuse me, there are so many single people that love the Lord and serve God, but you never have time to be at anything. And I'm not understanding why. I've talked to a lot of pastors. We've talked to a few pastors. Maybe that one time we were out to dinner at a restaurant. We were talking to a pastor, about a number of things, but we were talking about this subject. How, back in the day, people had a resolve about them of serving their church and being an active member of
Yeah,
their church. Now people think they're doing you a favor if they show up to church once or twice a month.
right,
They think they deserve a Saint of the Year award.
right.
And it was a pastor at the other table. We didn't even know that was a pastor. He said, "Look, I'm sorry, y'all. I won't try to be nosy, but I was listening. I was telling my wife, see, it's not just us." So a lot of pastors are noticing the lack of people that are, oh, I'm a part of church, this is my church family, but you know where to be found. You're always busy, you never available. How is it that you're single and you're the busiest person in church? You have no husband, you have no
No
kids.
kids.
Your man don't count, that's not your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Your niece and nephew don't count, them ain't your kids.
Right,
Your god babies, they're important, but they're not your kids.
right.
Your friend that you thinking about being in a relationship with, that don't count.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all live together, that don't count.
Yeah,
We have so many people that do not devote their time to the Lord. And honestly, it becomes a trap because marriage is that place where you're supposed to be devoted to each other. It doesn't mean that you don't serve, but it looks different. When you're single, you have the most time you will ever have. Let me say it again, ever have to invest in your relationship with God, to really serve and be an ample part of your church, to travel and go on trips because you don't have a spouse to consider, you don't have kids to look out for and make sure they go to school or do all these other things. You don't have the normal obligations that other people have. And there's nothing wrong with obligations. It is a mature but realistic part of whatever stage of life that you're in. So if you are married with a family, you've got kids, obviously there's a slew of obligations that come with that phase in life. And that is something, both phases are a ministry. But what I'm noticing is single people do not treat being single like a ministry.
right.
You feel like you haven't arrived and you're not ready to do ministry until you got somebody to jump on top of. And that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot see the ministry in your servitude while you're single, then you definitely don't need to get married and start then.
Yeah,
You're already supposed to be conditioned and trained to have the agility to move around your responsibilities
yeah,
without your life falling apart. Because if you can't do that with the little bit of responsibility you have while you're single, it's going to become a whole hot mess when you get married. But let's backtrack for a minute. Let's talk about maximizing your singleness. First, let's talk about some of the distractions because there are
yeah.
distractions that come in place when somebody's single and you're not really focused on your relationship with God. You're not focused on answering your call. You're not focused on your gifts and talents. You're not focused on the ministry that you will walk into in due season. You just here, there, everywhere. What are some of the distractions that you notice with single people besides a relationship?
Their desire to be married.
That's good.
You know, Paul, if you read some of Paul's writings, and we know Paul won't perfect. He didn't get everything right. But when you read some of Paul's writings on marriage, he viewed marriage as a distraction from the work of the Lord. And that's why,
Y'all,
he preached that, hey, I'd rather you be single,
y'all.
because when you are married, you have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Biblically, you have a responsibility to that individual, to prioritize them and all of that kind of stuff. And see, we have made such an idol out of marriage, and it's all because people cannot control their hormones. You just horny, you want to get some, but
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
after you get married and you're all sexed out and stuff like that, because believe me, after a while you can do it so much you tired of it. All right, you can enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it, and then you just get tired of it. Believe me. So after that, then you really don't really have nothing. You really don't have nothing to offer each other but sex. You
Mm.
know, but I think our desire for marriage, and there's nothing wrong with desire in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Let me clear that up.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be married, but what's wrong is that we don't let certain processes play out before we get married. We're not patient.
And this includes your servitude in ministry
Yeah,
and how to maximize your singleness.
because when you're single, you're supposed to, like Paul said, you're supposed to be attending to the things of the Lord.
Exactly.
When you're single, you should be the busiest person in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
When you're single, okay, when you're single, you shouldn't have all this extra baggage to where you cannot serve the Lord. Okay, when you're single, you trust God to put the necessary pieces and people in place that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
needed for your future. You trust God with your spouse. Okay, and though I encourage marriage. We have to be careful that we don't rush people into marriage either.
That part.
You know, some people say, "Well, it's better to marry than to burn," and that word "burn" literally means to burn with lust.
But see, if you focus during your singleness, you have something to do, you won't be burning like that. And
Yeah,
that's part of the problem. People are bored, so you have nothing else to occupy your time. You have nothing else to focus your attention on. Some people think, "Oh, I desire a spouse." No, honestly, you're just bored and horny. If we're gonna call it what it is, you don't want the responsibility. If you don't listen, let me say this again: being single is a ministry.
it
Being
is.
married is a ministry. If you have not learned to appreciate the ministry of being single, you definitely don't want the ministry of dealing with a whole nother human being.
Yeah,
You don't. Both are a ministry. And like I said, where people are not taught to treat their singleness like a ministry, you're not taught the value of it and how you should approach it. You look
yeah,
at it wrong. All you look at it like is you mad because you ain't got nobody to give you no flowers on Valentine's Day. You mad because you ain't got nobody to wear twin pajamas with when it's Christmas time. That stuff is stupid and that's for show. And if you like doing stuff like that, great. But it's stupid in the sense of it's not something to be mad or be jealous of. Because on a day in and day out basis, ain't nobody wearing matching socks every day. Ooh, we got Monday socks, Tuesday socks,
yeah,
Wednesday socks. Ooh, go get your hoodie. People are not doing that every day. That's one snapshot, just one snapshot that you see on social media for candid camera where they got the right angle.
hmm,
But on day in and day out, get your hoodie out my way. Oh my God, why you got to? Like you don't see the side, the human side, where people get on each other's nerves. And
yeah,
so you see that perfect little picture, and yes, it's a dramatized example, but there's some truth to it. You see that perfect little picture, you think, oh, I wish I had. That's not every waking moment of their life.
hmm.
It's not. It's not. So go ahead. You was gonna say something?
Personalities clash.
Mm-hmm.
The two become one. That's a process.
It's a journey.
It's a process, and then marriage is a mirror too. It shows you, because while you out there, being hero to everyone else. Your
Mm-hmm.
spouse know the real you. They know your struggles. They know your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they know all of that. So and sometimes what they do or say may remind you of that.
Mm-hmm.
Your spouse keeps you humble.
Right. Now
Okay.
let's backtrack. Let's backtrack
Yeah.
because we want to give you some keys for how
Yeah.
to maximize your singleness.
Definitely.
The first thing that you need to do is maximize your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Maximize your experiences. And I think the millennial generation has done a really good job of taking note of that. You are seeing people travel more. You're seeing people go on trips and
Yeah.
go to other countries and try new things, and people have these destination experiences and all these things that we did not see in the previous generation. With some people, you got some boomers and Gen Xers that might scoff at them, well, that's just irresponsible and they doing. Honestly, just because you didn't do nothing with your dried up life does not mean that they're being irresponsible. See, because listen, this is what happened. A lot of people in that generation, right,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of societal norms and pressures and morality was different at that time. A lot of people graduated high school and went right in to get married, right in the workforce getting married. They graduated, boom, and they went right into all of these responsibilities. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's for who it's for.
Mm-hmm.
But some people went to college and then went got married. It's for who it's for. The problem is when you make that decision and then you become bitter because you have this longing for what is unfulfilled in your life. You have a longing for what is unfulfilled, and then you cannot enjoy and focus on the ministry in front of you. In this case, we will be discussing a marriage because you are lusting after the life of being single, and it just cannot be. So while you're single, maximize these experiences. Take those trips. If you decide, oh, I want to go to Paris, don't wait, because once you get married and have a family, it's not saying that won't never happen, but your priorities
Yeah,
change
you
at
got to
that
plan.
time.
You got to plan that months and months
And
and
a lot of people don't prepare for the priority changes.
yeah,
Take
buddy.
that trip, do a lot of the things that you want to do. Some people call it irresponsible, but it would be better for you to fulfill those places, those dreams, those desires first. And or if you do decide to put some of them off till later, do you have a realistic plan in place for when you're going to achieve those things and how you're going to achieve those things?
Yep.
If you wait 2 or 3 years and go ahead and travel, see some places, have those experiences, it will be better off for you.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can do to maximize your singleness, and this is a big one, build solid friendships and build solid platonic
Yeah.
relationships. Now, this is a good one for men and women.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to the man side, but I know for women it's very easy to get wrapped up in the role of being a wife and being a mother and whatever that all will entail. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I don't have time. And you find that it's harder the older you get and the more responsibility you have on your plate, it's harder to find time to cultivate true, genuine relationships.
Yeah.
It really is. Not saying it's impossible, but it is harder. And again, you have more obstacles in the way. So take that time to cultivate those relationships, develop that village, have that solid support system that you need. So when you do enter the next phase of life, you have people around you that are cheering you on, that are supporting you, but can also be there for you mentally, emotionally, socially. You want to have a solid support system. You keep hearing it takes a village to raise a child. Where's your village? Don't have a baby and then look around for the village. If you can, develop that village first because it will be very beneficial to you in the long run.
Hmm.
What's something else people can do to maximize, really get the most out of their singleness?
Um, I think they need to really work on their soulish health.
Ooh, that's good. Ooh, that's good.
Their
Yes.
soulish health. So that's dealing with your mentality, your mental health, all that.
Mm-hmm.
You've been violated when you was little. Listen, you need to get that. You need to go see a therapist, get some deliverance,
That's good.
something. You know that you didn't have a good upbringing. You need therapy. You need to sit down and get healed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to bring that into. a whole nother. See, we get married with all our baggage.
Mm,
We
that's
get
good.
married with all our baggage, all our generational curses, all our little spirit spouses, and all this other stuff. We get married with all that, and then it causes warfare in the marriage later. But if you would take care of this stuff in your singleness,
Mm-hmm.
then you wouldn't have to deal with it when you're married,
Right.
and then birthing kids, making kids, after that image and likeness.
Mm. Now, I want to pause right here for a minute because this is a lot of people's problem. So let's say somebody is single, right? How would they go through the process of working these things out and dealing with a lot of these things and focusing on their soulless health? What would you say to somebody that's in this place now? Let's say maybe they're single. Of course, they desire to be married. Maybe they're not. Let's say for this case, they're not in a relationship right now, or maybe they're in a relationship, but it hasn't kind of reached that point of engagement. What would you advise them to do stepwise to work on their soulish health?
Work on their soulish health. Um, Number one, I mean, first of all,
You mentioned the deliverance. You did
yeah,
mention, get some therapy, get some deliverance. But what do they do? Where do they go? How do they go about this?
you have to re-educate your soul too.
That's good.
So,
Hmm.
so whether it's through books, videos, whatever,
Okay.
just reshaping your entire consciousness.
Okay, so let's pause because you kind of run it like I'm trying to unpack it and you
Okay.
trying to like rush through it.
Okay.
Like we try to pump the brake. We trying to stay right here for a minute, for a little while. So with re-educating yourself, you mentioned books, videos. So basically, they need to take time to feed the right things into
Yes,
themselves.
indeed.
Okay,
Yes,
let's
indeed.
talk about that.
Yeah, you gotta put the right things in you because you a lot of us have had wrong negative experiences and wrong things put in us,
That
and counter you have to counter that because see experiences, words and experiences leave an imprint in the soul.
And this goes into what I was saying about new experiences too.
Yeah,
Because if you're already creating a good practice of creating new experiences, you have something in place to replace some of these old hard experiences.
yeah.
But I like that part on re-educating your soul. Stop.
Scratch me past that.
That was an accident.
Don't do that. I got it.
Re-educating your soul and re-educating yourself, you have got to make sure you have the right things. You
Yeah,
can say, oh, I grew up with, an alcoholic parent or a depressive parent or an abusive caretaker. You recognize that was bad. That's great. But if you don't give yourself a healthy model to follow, give yourself a healthy view of what that looks like, you say, oh, I want something different. I want something better. I want something healthy. How do you know what something healthy looks like unless you re-educate yourself? You know enough to know that's not what you want, but you have no image, vision, or preset for what you actually do want.
right.
And this is where some people end up repeating the same vicious cycle because you do not give yourself a healthy model to follow. I want to be like my daddy. But did you go around a man that wasn't like your daddy? Did you find an uncle, find a brother, find a pastor, find a coach, somebody that is okay? This is the kind of man I want to be like, or this is the kind of woman I want to be like. Did
Yeah,
you find somebody's behavior you want to follow, or you want to pattern after? And did you properly position yourself to glean from them, whether it's a mentorship situation, a life coaching situation, whatever it is? Did you position yourself to receive the pour so that you can have the right things to follow?
and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Because people hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
So the same instrument, which is people that hurt us, God uses those same instruments to heal us.
Mm-hmm.
I have a saying. A lot of time what hurt you, God used the same thing that hurt you to also heal you,
Mm-hmm.
if you would allow it though. If a father hurts you, guess what? Only a father can heal a father wound. Same thing with mothers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you got to counteract those negative experiences, even if you've been, some people have never been outside of their hood, outside of their region
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. So you're gonna have to cultivate a new experience of changing your scenery. I remember the first time I got on a plane, you know, so kind of a nerve wracking experience because we way up there, but I was at peace at the same time, just seeing all that beauty in the sky like that.
Mhm.
You know, I remember when we drove, when those trips out of town and we saw all the
Mhm.
mountains and things like that. I mean, a change of scenery will really counteract certain things
Right.
in you. Even going to different ministries with different cultures, that changed a lot, because I was so accustomed to black culture.
Right.
Some of y'all need to be delivered from black church. I just told somebody that the other day, you need to be delivered from black church.
Ooh, that's another topic.
You need to be delivered from black church. Black church ain't all bad, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to diversify your experience to get some balance. Because if all you know is shouting, dancing, bucket, and all that stuff, it ain't doing nothing for you.
Go back
Oh,
to the topic.
okay. I'm sorry.
Maximizing your singleness.
Chasing a rabbit. I'm sorry. So when it comes to your singleness, you're gonna have to um really invest in your wholeness as a person.
Last thing I want to mention about maximizing your singleness. Now, we talked about, if you're just tuning in, make sure you go back. But we talked about, serving in ministry and getting
Yeah.
started in your ministry and calling, your gift and calling, getting the development and mentorship you need. We've talked about your experiences, whether you want to travel or go places, try new things, see new things. We talked about you building your friendships and plutonic relationships. We
Yes.
also talked about you re educating yourself, getting that inner soul healing, getting deliverance, and finding the right things to model yourself after. Next thing you want to do is have a plan for your career. There's so many
Yes.
people that do not take the time to max. They spend them being single, just having any old job, not really thinking about who they want to be, where they want to be in the next, even the next 5 years. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to have multiple interests. But a lot of times people don't have a plan. And then when you move on, you get married, and then it's like, oh, I want to go back to school. It's like, okay, well, that's another $50,000. That's time, and attention out of whatever marital goals that you have,
Right.
because now you want to go chase a rabbit that you should have chased and developed in your singleness. So have a plan for your career. You may be in a certain place, but that needs to be communicated. And honestly, a lot of men do that. They end up getting married and, oh well, I want to move all the way to Timbuktu now and go work over here and be this and do that. And you expect a woman to just drop her life and follow you 2,000 miles to nowhere.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. And actually, that's a hot topic that's coming up on social media now, how men will use moving to weaponize their control over women. You move them away from all their friends and all their family and everybody
Red
they know.
flag.
You move them away from the village they created. You move them away from those friendships and plutonic relations. You move them away from everything. They don't know nobody or nothing. You move the marry them and swoop them away 5 states over, and then Dr. Jekyll turned to Mr. Hyde type
Red
situation.
flag.
So yes, be intentional. Hey, I'm here now, but in 5 years, I want to move to this state, or I want to move to that city, or I want to go live abroad. You need to think about this stuff long term. Or hey, I don't really have any plans yet, but if I decided later on in life, how would you feel about moving abroad for 6 months out the year? Or how would you feel about going here or going there? At least find out where the person's head is in the game before you just marry this person and assume things, and it's just like, what are you doing? So definitely tell us in the comments. What are some, if you are single, what are some things that you're doing to maximize your singleness right now? And if you are married, what are some things you wish you would have done, or some things you're going back to do now that you did not have the chance to do while you were single? Tell us in the comments. Drop us a line. We definitely want to hear from you. Any closing remarks for this episode?
What you do in your singleness is planting a seed for what you do, either in your marriage or your future. You're literally preparing for your future. So if you value your future, if you value what God has really designed or called you to do
Mm-hmm.
or to be, then while you're single, okay, get all that stuff together.
Yeah.
Get all that stuff together. Discover yourself as a whole individual person first before you start trying to introduce somebody else, into that. So I would leave it at that.
Listen, this has been a great episode. Drop it in the comments. Tell us what you think. Be sure to follow us over on IG at King and Queen Blair. And until next time on the F3 podcast, goodbye.